We have been on David, and one of the first things that Pastor Danny said, if you remember, and I want to recall your member to this, the very first week he shared with us a revelation. And if we can grab a hold of this revelation, this revelation will revolutionize you and me. It has me. And I've grabbed a hold of this thing, I've recited it over and over. And he said these words, "You are not your own, but you're bought with a price." You remember that? You are not your own. You don't belong to yourself. You belong to the King of Kings and the Lord of... Is that not exciting? That I belong to Jesus. I'm His and He's mine. That's a revelation that if you grab a hold of, man, you can persevere through anything. You can literally persevere through anything. Another thing that Pastor Dane says, God can't... Thank you so much for that light. God can't get nothing through you till He simply gets it in you. When the Word of God gets planted inside of your life, friend, you can do anything. You can go places you've never been before. And number 3, one of the things he said was, we need to see people the way God sees people. One of the hardest things that we have to do, and I know probably all of us are the same, is not look at people and judge them. Because if you was to look at me this morning and see, oh, that guy, he ain't got nothing to say. And I don't. But I'll tell you one thing, God does. And God chose me to say it. And that's what's exciting about it. Lord, He used a donkey one time. Surely He can use me. Hello, somebody. So we need to see people as God sees them. We judge people on the outward appearance. This guy don't look right. This person don't look like. They don't act like. It's not about what you see. It's what God sees. So remember that. Try your very best before you start judging people and looking at them and judging who they are and what they are. See what God sees in them. Because God sees His child. Hello? God sees His child. And one thing He said also, He said, quit mourning over the loss of something that's gone. It's time to move on. Don't stay where you're at, friend. It's time to move on where God is trying to move. If you're continuing living in your past, you're never going to prosper in your present, and you're never going to get to your future. We need to get to our destiny. And the only way to get to our destiny is we start listening to the Lord. Whatever God says do, you simply do it. Take the steps that God ordains, and if God don't ordain it, don't take the step. Stand still and wait on the Lord. Listen, I'm getting excited, ain't I? I used to think, well, if I sat down, I wouldn't get excited. But I'm about to sit here and jump out of this chair. I'm just so excited about what God is doing in your life and my life. Because when we listen to God, God will take us places. And then last week, Pastor, his message title was Slaying Your Giant and Rehearsing Your Past Victories. And he made this statement, the gospel has already happened. Listen, guys, when we start living the Word of God, and for those of you that may not know, I keep my Bible right here. I don't have a paper, so it's in here. I got 30 different versions right here. And I read it, and I read it, and I read it. I found out if I read the Word, if I get it inside of me, I can go through anything. Because I know what's in here is happening. It's happening in me. So let the Word happen in you. Live the Word. Let it live in you. Let it breathe in you. And you'll see things take place different in your life. I want to get into the message today, so if you'll turn with me to 1 Samuel. 1 Samuel chapter 16, verses 14 through 23. And I need to take the time to go ahead and read all the way through it, and we'll go back and capture some of this. Just to let you know, I got here early this morning, and I like to make sure I go through things, and I got everything settled with the Lord, and make sure everything's good. So I've been through this one time, and it goes longer than what I have right now. I'll just go ahead and tell you that. But my wife has informed me she's in the nursery. So let's start reading. 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 14, and I'm going to be reading in the New Living Translation. Now the Spirit of the Lord had left Saul, and the Lord sent a tormenting spirit that filled him with depression and fear. Some of Saul's servants said to him, a tormenting spirit from God is troubling you. Let us find a good musician to play the harp whenever the tormenting spirit troubles you. He will play soothing music, and you will soon be well again." "All right," Saul said. "Find me someone who plays well and bring him here." One of the servants said to Saul, "One of Jesse's sons from Bethlehem is a talented harp player. Not only that, he's a brave warrior, a man of war, and has good judgment. He also has a fine-looking..." I always think about myself when I read this. He is also a fine... I'm going to tell you something, guys. If you can't look in the mirror every morning and see what God has made and call it good, you see where I'm coming from? I'm not trying to brag on myself of how good I look. Even though I could, I won't do that. But I brag on what God... Yeah, I'm humble. I brag on what God has done. I brag on what I look in the mirror every morning. No, I'm not the best-looking guy, but I know I'm what God has made. I know I'm what God's made, and He don't make junk. He don't make junk. I just said I wasn't going to stop, but I did. He is also a good-looking man like Ed, and the Lord is with you. It's all right to have a little fun, ain't it? I'm having a ball. Some might think he's delusional. Anyway, Saul sent messengers to Jesse to say, "Send me your son David the shepherd." Jesse responded by sending David to Saul, along with a young goat, a donkey loaded with bread, and a wineskin full of wine. So David went to Saul and began serving him. Saul loved David very much, and David became his armor-bearer. Then Saul sent word to Jesse asking, "Please let David remain in my service, for I am very pleased with him." And whenever the tormenting spirit from God troubled Saul, David would play the harp. Then Saul would feel better, and the tormenting spirit would go away. I want to back up to the very first verse I read, because there's a statement that was made here that's troubling. And that statement was simply this, that the Spirit of the Lord departed from Saul. Now, friend, that's a terrible place to be. But Saul got to that place. I need you to understand this. When we move outside of grace, when we get outside of God's grace, we will automatically fall back into law. And under the law, there's nothing but torment and depression. When you try to live under the law, it's crazy. It's oppression on you all the time. And that's where Saul had gotten to. He was living under this kind of junk in his life. I want to just share the story of Saul a little bit, because you didn't know where he came from. Saul was given instruction by Samuel the prophet. He was told to go to the Amalekites, if I said that right. He was told to go down to the Amalekites and destroy. Matter of fact, the Bible declares it like this. He said, utterly destroy them. Get rid of everything, every animal, everything, destroy it. Get rid of it. Well, Saul didn't listen. He thought, well, I'm going to... Meaning, I know I've thought like this before. I'm going to do it my way. I think Frank Sinatra made that song probably My Way. Well, that's kind of... Saul started that story. I'm going to do it my way. Because he came back with... And I may not say this word right, but it's Agag, the king. A-G-A-G. Agag. He came back with him, left him alive. Not only that, he brought back several herds of goats, sheep, and a lot of herd. He brought it back with him. He goes before Samuel, the prophet, and says, well, Samuel, I brought all this back, and I'm going to offer it up to the Lord. Man, didn't you hear? Didn't you hear what the Lord said? I can just see Samuel rubbing his head. Saul, you've messed up. That's not what God said. God told you to utterly destroy everything. And in not doing what God said do, you've rejected the word of the Lord. So therefore, God has rejected your sacrifice. God would not receive it from him. So there's where Saul was. Saul rejected God. Therefore, the Spirit of the Lord left him. It is a terrible place to be when we will not follow the commandment of the Lord. When we just simply go our own way and do our own. Has anybody ever done that before? Just kind of did your own thing? Well, I have. And I'm telling you, it's a rough road home. I remember one time, I don't remember, Morgan, yeah, she was a baby. She was a baby then. And we had this Impala. Real nice car. I mean, there was nothing wrong with it. Very, very low mileage. There was nothing wrong with the car. It's perfect. Good car. We were doing good. Well, I got my eyes on this Jeep Cherokee. Man, that thing was pretty. Man, I looked good in that thing because I already knew I looked good. So all I just wanted to make some kind of improvement there. So I'm going to get this Jeep. And so I prayed about it. And I asked the Lord, I said, Lord, should I get this Jeep? Because I was taught from my dad, you ask the Lord everything. And so I asked him, I said, Lord, should I get this Jeep? And the Lord didn't, remember this, most of the time God won't speak in all the voice, but you get that yuck inside. But I could feel the Lord saying, no, 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 no. Well, what did I do? I bought the Jeep. Stupidest move I ever made in my life. I mean, I was making good money at the time. Everything was going good in my life. Man, I was flowing. I thought, what do you know? I got the money. I can do this, God. I got this. I got this. Yeah, forget it. I got it. I can just see God saying, yeah, go ahead. You got it. I'm going to let you have it. You can hold it too, buddy. You can hold the loan note that you're not going to be able to pay because the bottom fell out of the industry and I lost jobs. I couldn't pay for it. It got so heavy on my life. Oh, that didn't stop there. It didn't stop there. I had wrecked my motorcycle and hurt my back, and it was so uncomfortable to ride in. Every time I'd get in the car, I'm hurting. I'm saying, man, I hate this car. I hate this car. The air conditioning went out on it. Everything was happening to the car simply because I rejected what God said do. I'm so glad for grace, aren't you? I'm glad that the Lord shows grace in our life. Jesus said these words. He said, without me you can do nothing. And you need to realize this. We all need to realize it. Every decision we make, everything we do in life, we need to run it through the Lord. Everything you do, you just run it through God. And God will give you the yuck feeling on the inside. You'll get that yuck feeling of, well, should I do this or not? And if you get that yuck feeling, I heard Pastor Dan, I love this. When you get that yuck feeling, the best thing to do is back away from it. Back away, because it's going to cost you. It's going to cost you. The law came to prove that without Jesus, we deserved judgment. But with Jesus, we don't get what we deserve. Thank God for grace. Amen. Pastor Danny made a statement Wednesday night. I wanted to share it with you again. Religion will take your peace and give you condemnation. But Jesus will take your condemnation and give you peace. Aren't you glad that if you learn to listen to the Lord? It's not a learning trait. It's just paying attention trait. I tell my girls this all the time. Just pay attention. Pay attention. Because if you'll pay attention, the Lord will talk to you. Will it be a loud voice? Probably not. The Lord probably is not going to shout at you and say, don't do that. Now, He might. I'm telling you, if He does, it's going to scare you to death. Boy, you're talking about scared out of your pants, you'll be scared out of your pants then. But it's just so amazing when you listen to the Lord and what He will do. I've watched the Lord over on my own life. I've seen God just orchestrate things in my life to make it better for me. I didn't deserve it, but through grace He did it for me anyway. And this is where David was at in the scripture this morning. David was, well, first of all, he was a shepherd in the field. But he was right in the middle of a God setup. He was getting to the place where God was getting ready to move him from being a shepherd in the field to living in the king's palace. That's where he was. Now, David went through a lot of stuff to get there. But God knows how to take you from where you are to where He wants you to be. You remember this. It doesn't matter what you face in your life right now. The things you go through, the turmoil, the things that you face right now. It doesn't matter. God's watching you. He's watching every move you make. And when you take the steps that He ordains, God will move mountains just for you. He'll do just that. Why? Because He looks out for His kids, just like you look out for yours. I want the best for my kids. I try my best to do things to make it easier for them. Well, it's the same way God does. He don't want you having a hard life. He wants you to have a good life. So He's constantly looking out for us. So wouldn't it be easier for us to learn from someone that's trying to direct us than try to learn our own way? The problem is, I know I've been this way. I'd just soon learn the hard knock way rather than listen to somebody. My daddy told me a lot of times what not to do, and yet I still did it. Is anybody like that in here? I'm going to tell you, I've learned the hard way a lot of times, but then there's times I've just listened. I've listened, and God's allowed me to have it easier because I listened to what the Lord said. Chapter 37, put the glasses on so I can read this. Psalms 37 verse 23 says this: the steps of a good man, of a righteous man, or woman, child, whoever you are this morning, they're ordered by the Lord. If you listen to where God tells you to go, do what God tells you to do, God will take you from where you are right now. He'll take you from your place to His palace. And that's where our ultimate goal is. Our goal is to hear what God has to say, move to where He says move to, and watch God make things easy for us. It's easy to do my own thing. I've done it my entire life. You might think, well, what I do is very insignificant. What I'm doing is small. What I'm doing don't make a matter at all. Pastor Ed, all I do is I just push the button in the sound room and change those slides up there. Well, how in the world are you going to learn the song if somebody changes the slide? I mean, wouldn't we have been a mess this morning? We done a brand new song today. Would not have been a mess this morning if somebody wasn't sitting back there pressing that button. I mean, we had a hard enough time ourselves. And we've sung it a bunch of times. How would you have done it this morning if somebody wouldn't have been pushing the button? So the job's not insignificant. It may seem that's just the enemy talking, first of all. Understand that. It's the devil telling you, well, that job you're doing don't matter. You're cleaning the toilet, but that really don't matter. That don't matter. I drove this week to Pennsylvania, and the Lord's so good to me. So good to me. And I was coming back, and I stopped at a rest area to use the restroom. And when I stopped at the rest area, everybody ever been to a rest area? I figured you had. All right, you go in these rest areas, and I don't know how it is in the women's now. I've never been in that, okay? Just want to make that known. But in the men's, you can go two ways, this way and this way. And I went to the right and went into the restroom there. I'm going to tell you, that was the nastiest bathroom I've ever been in my life. It was sickening. I mean, it made me sick to my stomach. I had to turn around, walk out, and go to the other end. Can you imagine what it would be like if you got up to go to the restroom? Now, don't get up and go. Just stay here while I'm talking, okay? But if you went up to the restroom today and it was nasty, so your job's not insignificant. So when you're cleaning the toilet and there's nobody here watching you, and there's nobody here giving you accolades or patting you on the back, keep doing it. Keep doing it. That's what David did. David's, get this. Now, David, at an early age, Samuel comes to Jesse's house. We've heard this message. Pastor Danny preached it. Anoints David the king. What did David do? He went right back to being a shepherd. He went right back to doing what God had called him to do. Standing in the field, tending the sheep. Now, I've been to Israel, and I've seen the terrain there, and you need to understand this. They ain't a whole lot of grass everywhere. There are just certain spots of grass. So the shepherd's job is to find green grass for his sheep. And I can see him now, getting them sheep, moving them along, trying to get them to go to the green grass, and thinking the whole time, bless God, they anointed me king. When's that going to happen? Lord, I'm supposed to be king, and I've got these stupid sheep out here. I can just see this going on in his mind. I'm supposed to be a king, and I'm still tending the sheep. Just hold on. You might be just tending a few sheep. But God's going to take you from where you are. That's what He done for David. He called David one day. The story goes on, and He lets David know, David, It's time for you to go to the king's palace. It's time for you to go start doing what I've called you to do. God moved David from the field and took him into the king's palace, and he started doing what God called him to do. Little baby step, just little baby. You see, you may not know your next step, but what you do know is your final destination. We know where we're headed, and we're not going to stop. We're not going to slow. We're just going to keep going. When I started in, it was in high school. At an early age, I was interested in sound. I loved working with sound and sound boards and things like that. And as a little boy, I would sit in the sound room and I'd watch them and things. And I loved doing stuff like that. And so in high school, I got involved in that. And I didn't know where God was going to lead me in that. I didn't know He was going to cause me to be a sound engineer. I didn't know that. But God ordered my steps, and I began to walk where God told me to walk. So when you move where God tells you to move, God will make big things out of you. He'll take the small, insignificant things that the devil tells you that's no good, and He'll make them big. You know, I don't always, and I'm sure I don't always listen to the Lord. But God has a way of orchestrating things in our life. He has a way of moving things around, and you just never know. I remember Tammy and I were first married, and we had just the one child, Trina, and she's here now. So I don't want to say sound bad, but we didn't want another child. Sorry. We did not, and we done everything possible to make sure that didn't happen. She was doing her birth control and all that. It just wasn't supposed to happen. You just wasn't supposed to happen. Now, God has a way of doing things, because you need to understand the journey I was on. I had left my father's church, and my father and I had separated, and we were going through problems. My dad wouldn't talk to me. You didn't know that, did you? My dad wouldn't even speak to me. We didn't speak for a lot of time. I'd go home at Christmas and literally hated going home for Christmas because there was so much tension in the family. Well, Tammy gets pregnant, and 3 doctors, just about the entire pregnancy, Tammy cried. She didn't want the baby. We were kind of down. She was just going to stifle our progress. That's all. It was. She was just going to mess us up. What she was. She's turned out good. But anyway, 3 doctors told us she was a boy. She looked like a boy to you. 3. I'm here to tell you, doctors don't know everything. Okay, they said she was a boy, and that kind of created a little bit of excitement, but it didn't happen. The day that she was born, I just want to show you how God can orchestrate things and move you from where you are to the great places. Because it was troublesome during that time. It was hard going to Dad's house and Dad not hardly speaking to you. That's not good. That was not good at all. When she was born, my mom and Dad showed up at the hospital. When they got to the hospital, you're talking about a reunion. We began to hug one another and love on one another. And God repaired a broken relationship through this child. That's what God will do. So when you look around, the devil's trying to show you all the bad junk that's going on, there's a final destination. There's a better place God's trying to get you to. Just walk out the journey. Don't give up. Don't throw in the towel and quit. Keep walking out the journey, because God's got some good stuff for you. Me and my dad began to heal that situation in our life, and me and my dad are like this. I call my dad every single day. A day does not go by that me and my father don't talk on the phone. Not one day. Not one day. 3 years ago, my dad has been in business. Matter of fact, BB's father started my dad in business when he quit, it was 29 years. He'd been in business for 29 years. That's a long time, isn't it? We've known each other a long time. But my dad started a business delivering country ham. And 3 years ago, this coming March, my dad had been trying to sell this business for hundreds of thousands of dollars. He had buyers. He had someone that was going to take the business, but he did not like what they were going to do. They were going to diversify and split his business up. He wasn't about to do that to his customers, so he picked up the phone. He called me. He said, "Son, you want this business?" I said, "Daddy, I can't afford this business." He said, "Don't worry about that. We worked that out. We worked that out. I'm a proud owner of a new business now with a nice truck." And it's all because of a relationship that was torn down by the enemy, and God began to repair it, and God repaired it to the place now it's the best it ever could be. That's what God will do in your life. It don't matter how bad it looks. It don't matter if you're out in the field somewhere tending like you're tending the sheep. It don't matter how miserable your job is at the time. If you just keep doing it and do it to the best of your ability, you'll watch God take the small areas in your life and He'll turn them around. That's the kind of God that you serve. We do around here the very thing that I love doing. We love God, we love people, and we serve both. And that's our job. And I got to quit. I'm going to quit here in just a minute. You give me a couple minutes. But I believe without a doubt that when you are loving on one another, and when you're helping one another, God just sits back and smiles. He's proud to say, I can just see him folding his arms. That's my child right there. That belongs to me. Look what they're doing. They're being just like me. I can imagine how David must have felt. David, when he even began to serve Saul, still wondering, well, when am I going to get to move on to be a king? Because, studying Saul's problem, Saul had a problem. He was tormented in his mind. And there would be times that he would throw things. He'd get in these rages. And it was terrible. David's over there playing the harp and trying to calm him down. And I can just see Saul doing everything he can to destroy him. And, I've been there. I was running sound in a church one time. And the senior pastor, threw the microphone at me. Sure enough. It's crazy. I can relate to David. That's why I like him so much. Me and him got so much in common. we just got so much in common. But in the middle of all that, look where God's brought me to. I feel just like I'm serving in the King's Palace right here. I'm at the best place I've ever been in my life. Got some of the greatest friends I've ever had in my life. God's good to me. He is so good. He's no respecter person. He's no respecter person. So remember this. Whenever you're going through it, just keep going through. Just keep pressing on. Listen to what God says and watch what He will do for you.